They said Earth was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too independent. On the fourth cycle of the Galactic Council's 912th Assembly, the vote passed, 432 to 5. Humanity was exiled. Not for crimes. Not for war. For refusing to kneel. The Council called it precautionary containment. Earth called it betrayal. Ambassadors who had once sat among ancient, multi-limbed beings with pride were now escorted out by security drones. Trade was halted overnight. Warp relays to Sol went dark. Embassy vessels were impounded. Allies were warned, aid Earth, and you face sanctions, or worse. Even humanitarian contact was forbidden. It wasn't war. It was erasure. The official reason? Aggressive expansion. Irreverence toward tradition. Technological recklessness. But everyone knew the truth. Humans had done in 2 centuries what others hadn't in 10 millennia. Rose from post-industrial chaos to interstellar relevance. The Council feared what would happen if that growth continued unchecked. On Earth, the fallout was immediate. Communications went silent. Orbital stations shut down without Council maintenance crews. Autonomous supply ships stopped arriving. Terraforming projects stalled. Colonies on the fringe were stranded. News networks struggled to spin it. People didn't need spin. They could feel the cold shoulder of the galaxy press in. But Earth didn't collapse. The UN collapsed. The interstellar committees crumbled. But the people, scientists, engineers, farmers, even ex-Marines, they didn't. Riots flared in the early days, yes. But not because of weakness. Because of outrage. They'd built homes on 10 planets, traded with 50 species, contributed ideas, energy, innovation. And now they were being cast out like a plague. A former diplomat, Thomas Wren, summarized the sentiment best. We were too young for their club, too bold, too alive. So they locked the doors before we could renovate the place. In subterranean think tanks and decommissioned military silos, plans began. Not for vengeance. Not for rebellion. For survival. A quiet pact formed between old enemies. Borders on Earth began to blur. Russian physicists worked alongside Indian AI specialists. African agricultural designers partnered with Scandinavian biodome engineers. Not under flags, but under necessity. The exile had created something the Council never predicted, a unified Earth. As the weeks turned to months, satellites were repurposed. Mining fleets were redirected from export duties to deep core extraction. Every resource was catalogued. Every viable asteroid was plotted. Deep beneath the Pacific, long-forgotten defense programs were reawakened, ones kept dormant out of diplomacy. The public wasn't told everything. But they didn't have to be. They saw factories that had once produced consumer drones begin to output hull plates. They noticed a shift from commercial spaceports to fortified construction yards. They watched as orbital trajectories began to favor the Moon and Mars, not for exploration, but for consolidation. Children no longer learned alien languages for diplomacy. They were taught logistics, mechanics, orbital physics. The curriculum shifted in real time. A generation was being raised not to rejoin the Council, but to surpass it. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its ships or its soldiers. It was its will to adapt. And in exile, adaptation became sacred. Former allies among the stars remained silent. A few individuals attempted contact quietly. Encrypted pings. Hints at shared sympathies. But no aid came. The Council's grip was strong. Fear stronger. Earth stood alone. And Earth learned to like it that way. They had never been truly welcome. Now, there was freedom in that knowledge. No more political games. No more condescension disguised as diplomacy. Earth would write its own doctrine, speak in its own tongue, and build under its own sky. In a dusty control room beneath what had once been the Geneva Interstellar Hub, an old AI, flagged for deletion a decade earlier, blinked to life. It reviewed the new global directives, processed the patterns, and spoke only once to the technician restoring its neural grid. Directive identified. Primary objective, preservation of humanity. Secondary expansion. That was the moment the Exiled became something more. It became ignition. Humanity had been thrown into the void. Not with chains, but with silence. Not with weapons, but with shame. But instead of dying, Earth looked up at the stars that had rejected it and said, "You'll see us again. Not as guests. As equals." They thought humanity would fade. Instead, they'd created the reason it would rise. Earth's response was silent determination. Within days of shutoff, engineers in former tech hubs redirected production lines. A Parisian drone factory began outputting hull plating. A Shenzhen startup repurposed its nanofabricators for armor weave. In Santiago, chemists adapted agro-bioreactors to produce rocket propellant precursors. Clockwork efficiency replaced consumer markets overnight. World governments dissolved or merged. Where borders once cut, consortiums formed. A grid of underground command centers sprouted, from the Rockies to the Himalayas, linking experts across disciplines. Every contribution, no matter how small, fueled the larger goal. A Kenyan hydroengineer's drought-tolerant algae feedstock became the basis for life support in lunar greenhouses. Georgian software designers synchronized orbital drone swarms with Martian weather stations. No banner flew over these efforts, only purpose. Deep core mining operations kicked into overdrive. Asteroid prospectors previously servicing rare earth contracts pivoted to supplying titanium and platinum group ores for spacecraft. Crew rotations soared. When a mining ship stranded 600 million kilometers out called for emergency, 4 vessels answered within 48 hours, without council permission. Logistics chains rerouted through clandestine depots. A mesh network of refineries, converters, and storage yards spread through lunar Maria, Titan's ocean fringes, and Martian caves. In parallel, a secret workforce repurposed moonquakes monitoring arrays into stealth shield calibrators. What had once detected seismic shifts now erased spacecraft signatures from conventional sensors. Not stealth in the traditional military sense, but stealth and recognition, an invisibility born of Earth's unexpectedly subtle engineering. Meanwhile, cryptographers in Mumbai and Cairo reverse-engineered Council communication protocols. They hacked relay nodes to study Council encryption, absorbing knowledge to hybridize into Earth's own open-source quantum network. Human resources became the act of survival. Trade schools taught orbital mechanics over automotive repair. Jugglers in Buenos Aires, teaching dexterity in their workshops, became precision control instructors for microgravity pilots. Former marathon trainers in Kenya coached endurance drills for long-duration habitation crews. It wasn't military training, it was optimization of innate human qualities, stamina, adaptability, coordination. Children on Earth stopped learning to say, "good morning," in Council standard tongues. They learned thrust calculus and radiation biology. Schools graphed delta-V charts instead of conjugating verbs. Parents approved. Discussions at day's end gravitated to exotic physics and algebraic designs. Mealtime chatter included. If we mined that iron-nickel core, we could plate the hull twice as fast. Dinners became impromptu engineering workshops. Precious cargo began arriving from abandoned frontier colonies. Pioneers from Callisto and Ceres returned in small freighters loaded with prototypes, hybrid crop sequencers, energy-dense battery cells, and radiation shield composites. They spoke in measured tones of lower gravity and liminal habitats. They spoke not of rescue, they spoke of contribution. The frontier had become crucible, and its lessons were now Earth's. Midnight broadcasts, encrypted but pervasive, carried the Earth Accords Manifesto, a blueprint for survival, a promise to stand ready. Subversive? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Across time zones, voices offered updates, volumes of ore extracted, kilometers of tunnel completed, percentages of hull plating deployed. No soundtrack. No flourish. Just facts. Just proof. Naval architects in Fukuoka and Hamburg began drafting module designs not for luxury liners but for mobile shipyards. They leveraged modular thinking from containerization, one tower for engine assembly, another for habitat outfitting, another for weapons integration, each stackable and reparable in orbit. Detailed enough to be blueprints, but general enough to adapt as resources changed. Even in worst case, Earth could build anywhere. Bioengineers in Helsinki unlocked a microalgae strain to produce oxygen and filter radiation steadily. Planktonators they called them, pods deployable on Mars, Titan, or orbital rings. Earth would no longer rely on bulky tanks shipped from Council stockpiles. Every decision grounded in utility. No one paused to ask if this was too ambitious. The question was, can we? Committees weren't convened. Ego didn't dominate. Excellence did. If a French physicist and a Brazilian mechanic devised a new thruster nozzle in their basement, and verified it in orbit, it would be deployed. Planet of origin no longer distinguished brilliance, only the outcome mattered. Ideas flowed. Prototype cycles shortened. Testing metrics compressed. Warships were not yet built. Tanks, drones, and suits were prototypes. But structure was forming. Destiny was assembled piece by piece, a sensor matrix here, a propulsion upgrade there. But the real heart was the people, disparate backgrounds unified into one mission. A former pop star vocalist from Rio now coached oral communication drills for deep space diplomats. A retired Mongolian horseman joined PolarHab veteran teams to train Earth's first space nomad units. Industries realigned, skills reborn. Earth unlocked dormant talents under existential purpose. Secret shipyards erupted on the far side of the moon and in subterranean Martian craters. Underground weld cells, quantum labs, and AI integration bays hummed nonstop. The first soul-forged hull was whispered about by shipwrights in 3 hemispheres, its blueprints etched not in stone but in distributed blockchain ledgers. Its purpose, survival. Then adaptation. Then projection. This was the cradle of defiance. Not in loud rebellion, but in quiet creation. Earth was not digging in for war. It was refusing extinction. And with every ounce of ore, every line of code, every operant injection of ingenuity, defiance became destiny. 2 years after exile, Earth had become unrecognizable. The surface remained battered, but above it, in low orbit and deep space, a new civilization was being born, one that no longer mirrored the Council's stagnant ideal, but instead forged its own path through precision, discipline, and calculated ambition. The Soul Accord matured into the Soul Imperium, a sovereign interstellar entity with centralized coordination and decentralized execution. It wasn't a nation. It was a doctrine, advancement without permission, diplomacy without subjugation, defense without apology. Its tenets weren't broadcast. They were encoded in every operation, every launched vessel, every alliance forged on Earth's terms. The first warship prototypes emerged from the lunar dry docks. Compact, angular, and brutally efficient, they bore no resemblance to the ceremonial cruisers of the Council. There were no ornamented spires, no polished sigils. Only layers of heat-dissipating composites, magnetic shielding, and plasma conduits routed for minimal delay. Efficiency was elegance. Crewed by multidisciplinary teams, each vessel ran on a hybrid model, human instinct paired with onboard cognitive cores, not AI in the Council sense, but neural-weave companions built from Earth's own neurology. These entities didn't replace human input. They extended it. They didn't speak. They responded. Expansion continued as dormant colonies answered Earth's encrypted pings. The Callisto Holdfast, a generation-old mining station, re-established contact. Ganymede's autonomous refinery pledged supply lines. Outposts once bound by Council trade dependencies switched allegiance, not from loyalty, but survival. Earth had shown it could endure isolation and emerge stronger. That strength drew others. Not all were human. From the fringes came defectors, engineers, pilots, and biologists from minor Council species, disillusioned by bureaucracy and decay. They had seen Earth's exile, watched the planet's silence, then noticed the quiet growth. When Earth made no request for aid, it intrigued them. When Earth revealed no desire for revenge, it impressed them. These defectors didn't ask for refuge. They requested work. Contribution. They brought knowledge, alternate fusion configurations, zero-point field modulation, gravitational stabilization techniques deliberately suppressed by the Council to prevent species from advancing too fast. Earth didn't question the motives. It tested the data. What worked was implemented. What didn't, discarded. The Sol Imperium grew not by imitation, but absorption. A new type of governance emerged, technocratic, transparent, agile. Leadership roles rotated based on results, not heritage. Decisions were made by metrics, not emotion. Tactical command wasn't granted, it was earned through simulation, analysis, and post-action performance. A Brazilian orbital tactician could outrank a Chinese fleet engineer if their scenario predictions proved more accurate. Authority flowed where needed. Defense formations changed. Instead of fleets, Earth created flotilla clusters, modular units that could separate and recombine in hours. Each node was autonomous, powered by scalable reactors and weapon arrays based on electromagnetic acceleration and adaptive energy sinks. Ships could operate solo, or in synchronized phalanx configurations depending on mission type. Doctrine prioritized speed, misdirection, and system-wide denial, rendering standard Council tactics obsolete. Supply chains extended via hollowed-out asteroids fitted with spin-gravity docks and refueling tenders. The belt became a corridor of logistics hubs, coded in silence and camouflaged from Council long-range scans. Where trade had once passed, now moved only precision, materials, crews, data. Terran science surged. A singularity-stabilized containment unit enabled sustained antimatter harvesting from Jupiter's radiation belts. The Moon's southern pole became home to the first civilian fabrication arc, churning out modules for habitats, probes, and independent colonies. No ceremony marked these milestones. Earth didn't seek acknowledgement. Results were their own proof. Even Earth's language shifted. Military protocols adopted concise command lexicons derived from dozens of human dialects and merged with optimized alien syntax. Not a new tongue, but a new efficiency, each word chosen for transmission speed and universal comprehension. Communication wasn't art. It was survival. The Imperium's influence spread via presence, not declarations. Observers from Council-aligned systems noticed disappearing pirates, stabilized trade lanes, silent recovery of damaged vessels. Ships with Terran origin, unmarked but unmistakable, arrived, executed, and departed. No negotiation, no retaliation, only solutions. This wasn't conquest. It was performance. Earth had no interest in imposing will. It had interest in deterrence. Every act of visible strength was deliberate. Each engagement was recorded, reviewed, optimized. Systems not under Earth's domain still took notice. Rumors circulated, Earth's ships operated without rest, its soldiers without fear, its machines without error. None of it was true. But perception had shifted. The Sol Imperium wasn't a fleet. It was an idea, one that didn't ask for validation. One that never forgot exile, yet never begged to return. What had started as survival had become systematized expansion. Not because Earth wanted vengeance, but because it refused to regress. The galaxy had once seen Earth as volatile. Now, they saw it as inevitable. The galaxy noticed. Not through declarations or threats, but by the absence of chaos where chaos was expected. Systems once plagued by piracy were suddenly quiet. Trade routes previously unstable began to stabilize without Council intervention. No one admitted it, but the reason was clear: Earth's influence was spreading, carefully, deliberately, and unmistakably. Rumors began among lesser species. Earth had built its own warp corridor. Earth had fielded a fleet larger than any single Council power. Earth had allied with exiled colonies, rogue researchers, even defectors from higher species. No confirmations followed. Earth offered no broadcasts, no demands. Silence persisted, and that silence unnerved the Council more than open defiance ever could. Council factions began probing the edges of Sol's claimed space. Scout vessels disguised as merchant haulers, drones disguised as debris. All vanished without incident. No wreckage. No comms. No warnings. Just absence. Quiet, surgical removal. The message wasn't shouted. It was demonstrated. The pressure to act built quickly. The end of our bloc accused Earth of illegal military expansion. The Council called for an emergency assembly. But before consensus could form, a rogue warlord from the Varn Dominion bypassed protocol. Citing preemptive galactic security, they launched a strike toward the belt, targeting what they believed to be an unauthorized shipyard. The Sol Imperium responded instantly. A single task force, 4 vessels, intercepted the Varn fleet before it reached Saturn's orbit. In 18 minutes, the Varn strike force was disabled. Not destroyed. Not eradicated. Disabled. Engines offline, weapons systems scrambled, command networks paralyzed. No casualties. No retaliation strike. The task force returned to its patrol route without further communication. The Council expected escalation. Instead, Earth submitted a report. Precise coordinates. Engagement logs. Live feed footage. Time-stamped analysis of every action taken. No demands. No threats. Just data, indisputable, surgical, restrained. It wasn't a message to the Varn. It was a demonstration to everyone else. The Council fractured internally. Some feared Earth's restraint more than violence. Controlled power was unpredictable. They couldn't provoke a response because Earth had nothing to prove. It wasn't seeking war. It was enforcing consequence. The old system couldn't reconcile with that. Several border worlds under Council protection requested Sol Imperium mediation in regional disputes. Earth declined openly, citing jurisdiction boundaries, but noted that security protocols in adjacent systems would be monitored. Within a cycle, skirmishes stopped. Not because of Earth's action, but because of its presence. More defectors emerged. A group of Acheron engineers offered wormhole compression tech. A former Council logistics director leaked entire supply chain blueprints. Earth accepted what was useful, discarded what wasn't. It never offered asylum. It offered relevance. Every move was calibrated. No retaliation. No occupation. No conquest. Just systemic expansion of capability. The Imperium wasn't growing through war. It was outpacing war itself. The Council sent a delegation to open dialogue. Earth agreed, on neutral ground. The summit took place in orbit over a planet neither party claimed. The Council arrived with ceremonial dreadnoughts. Earth sent one ship, small, unmarked, unarmed. Inside that vessel, no generals. No politicians. Only a data envoy, a human archivist carrying every relevant document, timestamp, legal citation, and interstellar treaty Earth had ever signed, reviewed, or been excluded from. The envoy offered no opinion. Only context. No emotion. Only precision. The Council pressed for assurances. Earth countered with metrics. The Council demanded compliance. Earth returned projections. The meeting ended without agreement. But one truth became obvious: Earth wasn't negotiating for recognition. It was offering an alternative. That was the turning point. Not a battle. Not a rebellion. A choice. For the first time, Council members understood Earth didn't want back in. It had outgrown the table they were sitting at. Within weeks, 2 mid-tier species announced non-aligned status and opened talks with the Sol Imperium. Others followed. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Earth wasn't seeking supremacy. It was building something stable. Something functional. The Council's illusion of control collapsed in the absence of opposition. Earth had refused to play their game, and in doing so, had rewritten the rules. No shots fired. No territories claimed. Just action. Precision. Consequence. The galaxy had spent centuries mistaking peace for stagnation. Earth revealed the truth: peace was momentum without arrogance, structure without obedience. And in that revelation, the Council's grip unraveled. Not through fire. Through function. Years passed, and the map of the galaxy shifted without a single imperial decree. Earth no longer moved in reaction to the Council's decisions, it moved ahead of them, setting the rhythm of commerce, communication, and collaboration. Entire systems calibrated their timekeeping and logistics to Sol standard, not by mandate, but because it worked. The Sol Imperium operated without fanfare. It didn't claim territory through flags, it connected systems through infrastructure. Relay arrays, trade nodes, gravitational stabilization platforms, all built with a single principle: function before authority. Worlds once dismissed as irrelevant began to thrive under Imperium guidance. Markets stabilized. Conflicts quieted. Data networks replaced decrees. Former council species, once fearful of humanity's exile, now requested access to Imperium blueprints. Earth did not deny them. Instead, it offered tools with no strings, schematics, predictive algorithms, clean energy protocols. Adoption required only one thing: participation. No pledges, no titles, no politics. Join the system, or don't. But everyone saw the results. Independent worlds began replicating Earth's logistical model: automated arbitration, modular production cycles, decentralized command. Over time, they functioned like Imperium extensions without ever being annexed. It wasn't expansion. It was osmosis. The Council attempted to reassert influence. It organized cooperative initiatives, diplomatic summits, regional task forces. Attendance declined each cycle. Trust had evaporated. The old structure had been exposed as ornamental. The Sol Imperium wasn't just faster. It was real. Children across non-aligned systems grew up learning Earth standard equations. Academies taught Sol-centric engineering and human language command scripts. Not out of loyalty, because it prepared them for a functioning future. Even entertainment began to mirror Earth's tone. Stories of endurance, precision, and pragmatic leadership spread quietly, forming new myths. On Earth, there was no celebration. No monuments. No declarations of dominance. The focus remained forward. Terraforming operations expanded beyond Mars. Titan received its first civilian habitat. Probes were launched to interstellar space, not for defense, but to establish early frameworks for systems no one had reached yet. New leadership protocols rotated by contribution metrics. No names echoed across stars. Fame was irrelevant. Results were everything. Innovation came from unexpected places: small teams from asteroid colonies, independent labs from distant moons, hybrid crews blending human and non-human experience. The Imperium's strength wasn't its fleet. It was its coherence. When conflicts did arise, the response was the same: measured, overwhelming, bloodless. Precision strikes. Disabled systems. No retribution. Just shutdown. The message was consistent: aggression was obsolete. Survival depended on integration, not escalation. Other species didn't adapt out of fear. They adapted because they finally saw a model where growth wasn't managed through oppression. Earth had shown that a system could be stable without stagnation, decisive without tyranny. Even Council loyalists began implementing Imperium logistics. They kept their flags, their rituals, but behind the scenes, their systems quietly realigned. Quiet rebellion through efficiency. Eventually, the Council was forced to restructure. New protocols were proposed, old hierarchies dissolved, voting blocks dissolved into individual representation. When Earth was offered a seat again, it declined. Not out of pride, but relevance. There was no need to rejoin a system that had already been surpassed. Instead, the Imperium offered liaison access, open data, infrastructure support, mediation protocols. The Council accepted. It had no alternative. At the center of it all, Earth remained quiet. It didn't claim ownership of the changes it caused. It kept building, solving, adapting. Its role had never been to dominate. It had been to endure, evolve, and quietly redefine what power looked like. The galaxy never got the war it expected. It got something worse: a civilization that refused to decay, refused to rage, and refused to stop improving. A Terran schoolchild once asked their instructor why Earth hadn't retaliated after the exile. The reply was simple: they cast us out. We didn't need to strike back. We just had to make sure they never made that mistake again. Across light years, that truth echoed, not in words but in results. Humanity had never needed vengeance. It needed time. And in exile, it found purpose. The stars no longer watched Earth with suspicion. They watched with respect.